Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. We're returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, quite a few different styles. I couldn't tell you how many beers I've reviewed from these guys at this point in time, but the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've been very much enjoying over the last little while, and it's a style that we haven't had too many of from this brewery, come to think of it. So hopefully it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit to the northeast of me here in Lund to Eslöv once again, and that means that we're having a look at another beer from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri, or Remmarlöv Farm Brewery, as I guess you could call them in English. But yeah, this particular beer is called the Pilsner Lux. It comes in at 5% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is, a Pilsner or a premium lager as they're calling it. But yeah, this beer was released as part of the local Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for May of 2021, and this is one of a couple of lagers I think they've released over the last little while. I think I've reviewed maybe 3 or 4 lager beers from this brewery in total, but they do have another one called Eslöv's Pilsner that I need to have a little look at some point as well, so you'll see me review that one at some stage in the fairly near future. But I have to say, very curious to see how it turns out, so let's crack on with this review then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done it from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future because I keep an eye on the beers that these guys are releasing. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri, as I've told you already, are based on a farm, as the word Gård suggests, in Eslöv just out to the northeast of Lund. But these guys have been brewing there since the winter of 2014, and then in January of 2015 they started selling their beers through Systembolaget. But the owner and founder of the company is Håkan Nilsson, and together with his wife Michelle, he'd started his plan for a brewery a couple of years prior to this, and it's located on his family farm. Håkan is actually the 5th generation of his family to make his living on the countryside in Skåne. But the old barn was renovated and a brew house of 1500 litres was installed, and then Hampus Olofsson was hired as a brewer in August of 2014, having previously worked at Malmö Brewing Company before. Very nice guy actually. I think I've met him twice if I remember rightly. The first one was at the Malmö Öl and Whiskey Festival back in like 2016 or something like that. But yeah, over the last few years these guys have basically been expanding their capacity. They now have a 3,000 litre brew kit, and they invested in new fermentation tanks during the spring of 2018, and this apparently takes their brewery capacity up to a possible 800,000 litres of beer per year. In 2019 they also opened up their summer pub, which was opening every Wednesday, but this had to go on the back burner because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. They were planning to do further expansion over 2020, but they've kind of taken that easy over the last little while because the other parts of the business I think weren't doing so well owing to the pandemic, but the brewery has really kind of helped them push through it, of course. So maybe once this whole pandemic thing ends, we might see a little bit more expansion from these guys in 2022 or something like that. But the brewery side of the company is doing very well. They're still pumping out beers very regularly, and as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 70 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. The first time I encountered this brewery would have been back in about 2015, like late 2015, something like that, and it was always the winter beers that you used to keep an eye out for from these guys. They've also got a really interesting one that is called the Local Hops beer, and they brew that one using hops from Kronogårdens, who are quite close by, one of the first hop farms here in Sweden, which is very, very cool. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. Over the last few years, they've been releasing a lot of kind of New England hazy IPAs. They've had a black IPA in recent times. They've been releasing 1 or 2 lager beers, and I think they're going to release a West Coast IPA for June as well, but I'm not sure whether I can actually order that. I need to see how travel plans and things go over the next little while actually. So maybe you'll see that review, you maybe won't. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can really tell you about Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on with this one then and see how we go with this beer. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is very nice. It looks a little bit like a kind of old classic, something like this. The artwork is actually, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Eslöv Pilsner that they do as well. So I do need to see about getting that one reviewed. I think that's a regular in the two main Systembolagets in the town here in Lund. So I will see about getting one of those. But yeah, as you can see, Pilsner Lux comes in at 5% ABV, premium lager apparently, and it is a 330ml can. And I will complain about this. Lager should not be sold in 330ml cans. It just shouldn't. It should be in 440s or half litres. So now that we've got that one out of the way, we can actually have a focus on the beer and see how we get on. But you can see plain gold sort of bottle cap, not bottle cap, plain gold top on the can here. It looks very nice. I believe this beer cost me about 25 Swedish kroner, so that is a little bit more than £2 sterling, about €2.50, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $3, $3.25 American. I forget what the exchange rate is with the American dollar at the moment, but yeah, probably in the region of $3, something like that. So yeah, 330ml this one. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what it has in store for us. So there we are. Let's get it out. So I'm wondering how close, because it says Lux Pilsner Lux, but it also says premium lager. So if you get a premium lager, usually these are the ones that have always got corn and things like that in them. You know, they're kind of adjuncty lagers. So I have to say, I'm just curious to see what the interpretation of this one is going to be. But as you know, if you've been watching the channel for the last little while, I have been enjoying my lagers very much, and we've got quite a few good lager beer breweries here in Skåne now. You know, these guys are doing some really interesting ones. Helia Brewery, of course, do some very good ones, and I also had a really interesting lager beer from Rocket Brewing Company as well. I need to review another one of their beers because it's been a little bit of a while actually. Also Raj Brewery, they had a nice Pilsner beer, so I need to look at 1 or 2 more of their beers at some point fairly soon as well. But yeah, the Skånsk craft beer scene is growing a fair little bit actually, so yeah, it's always nice to support the local breweries, of course. But yeah, as you can see with this one, and as you would expect from a sort of Pilsner lager beer, this one has poured a lovely kind of pale golden straw. You could see that the head on this one was a bit more than a finger, and I would say that's a perfect, you know, very, very clean, crisp white head on this one. 1 or 2 smaller bubbles, or 1 or 2 bigger bumpy bubbles, sorry, sitting at the top of the head there, but otherwise underneath it's a nice kind of small foamy bubble that you get out of this one. The beer itself is actually kind of crystal clear. I think that's the condensation around the glass that's making it seem a little touch naturally hazy. But yeah, if we shine the light through this, definitely a very kind of pale golden straw colour. Now remember, the Pilsner beer originates in the city of Pilsen in the Czech Republic, formerly the Austro-Hungarian Empire, of course. It was originally inhabited by a mix of ethnic Czechs and Germans, but the Pilsner beer was developed by a Bavarian brewer who moved to the city in the 1840s, if I remember rightly. But yeah, he was the first brewer for the company that became Pilsner Urquell, or Plzeňský Prastroj, as they're known in Czech. But he wasn't a very nice man, and so they brought in a Czech brewer instead, who was the one that really carried things forward. So yeah, the Pilsner style originates from the city of Pilsen in Bohemia over in the Czech Republic. So yeah, pretty cool actually. And remember, these are lager beers, so it's cold temperature fermentation, somewhere between, you know, about 10 and 12 degrees. And yeah, ales, conversely, they ferment at between 15 and 18 degrees normally. So that's the main difference. You get bottom fermenting yeasts our lager beers, top fermenting yeasts, our ale beers, and it's to do with the temperature basically. But yeah, it goes together very, very nicely, this one. It looks the part certainly of a nice kind of crisp Pilsner, so I'm curious to see how authentic it is. That's one of the things I always look for in these lager beers, is how authentic and close they are to the original. So we will be looking to see how authentic this one is compared to either a German Pilsner or a Czech Pilsen beer. The Czech ones tend to be a little bit more kind of bready and yeasty, of course, whereas the German ones are a bit more dry and crisp. But yeah, as I say, the beer finds its origin in the city of Pilsen. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. So I'm going to say, on aroma, first impression is that it is pretty authentic. So straight away with this one, you can smell a little bit of that sort of crackery note underneath. There's a little bit of a kind of soft white bready character, and there are one or two little bread crusty elements too, but you get that nice crisp Pilsner malt quality out of this one. It probably is German malt that they're using in this one, because it just has a little bit more dryness to it. I know there's a maltery in there is a maltery here in I don't know if they're based in Skåne actually. They're certainly in Sweden, the Viking maltery, and they do a lager malt, but it's just a little bit softer than this. I think this one, I think it has to be German malt that's in this, just because of the dryness you get out of it. But for me, as I've told you before, Pilsner malt is a little bit annoying to describe, because you do get a little bit of a kind of, you know, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing out of it. So you get that in this beer. You can feel a little bit of that kind of sweet biscuity caramelly note out of the beer, but it also just gives you a lot of kind of dryness and crispness to the beer. Pilsner malt for me is more of a kind of vibe that you get out of the beer, rather than it, you know, being a really distinctive aroma, if that makes sense. It's a really, Pilsner malt is really annoying to describe. It's quite difficult actually, but you know, if you've had a few lager beers and you're into the lager beers like I am, you'll hopefully know what I'm getting at with that. But like I say, a little bit of a kind of crackery backbone to this one, some softer white bread in there, a few bread crusty elements, and then in the very centre of the nose you're getting a wee bit of that sweeter kind of brown sugary note, which will be the alcohol of course, and a little bit from the Pilsner malt. You get a nice little bit of a biscuity quality, and then you also get that kind of nice dryness from the Pilsner malt in there as well. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to report on the malty side of things. The hoppy character of this beer is very authentic as well. So in these kind of beers, they're going to use, there's a couple of different possibilities of hops. They could use, you know, the German Hallertaus or Tettnangers, and you know, there's other hops in there as well that are slightly higher alpha. So you know, the Zeus, Zeus is American, the Hercules, you know, the other things like this. You can go a little bit further up the scale, but most likely it's a Hallertau or a Tettnanger that is going to be in this from Germany, or it could be the Czech Sats, which is a little bit kind of more spicy, or it could be something like, you know, Styrian Goldings from Slovenia. This beer comes across as quite smooth in its hops, but quite bright, so I would suspect that it's either Hallertau or Tettnanger in this one. An outside bet, of course, could be something like Lubelski or whatever from Poland. So yeah, those are the kind of hops that you might see used in this one. But the grassy component for me, it's got a little bit of a smooth earthiness to it, a nice bright floral aromaticity, and just a little touch of a kind of grassy zestiness. To me, it's Hallertau or Tettnanger, or it could be, you know, Pearl or one of the slightly higher alpha acid ones, of course. But yeah, the green component of this one is pretty damn authentic as well, actually. So yeah, it comes. This beer really does come across a little bit more like a German Pilsner, to be honest, than a Czech one, I would say. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of a slightly peary ester in there. You get a nice little bit of a kind of lemony, grassy sort of thing. And yeah, I just think it works very, very well. It goes together really, really nicely in the beer. So yeah, I think that it does the business, this one, in terms of its kind of green hoppy kind of components. It's very German. The malt base kind of comes across as very German as well, and the kind of fruity side of the beer is kind of what you'd expect, you know, sort of peary note to it, a little bit of a kind of apple-y quality, maybe a tiny little hint of like an apricot or something like this. But yeah, it's got everything you would expect from a nice Pilsner. I would say the kind of dryness and crispness in the malt base there comes across as being a little bit more akin to I'd say that it comes across as being a little bit more akin to a German Pilsner than a Czech one, of course. So take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we tried this one now. So yeah, this one is the Pilsner Lux 5% Pilsner lager beer from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri in Eslöv here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, it's quite it's interesting because you do get quite a bit of Pilsner character out of this, but at the same time it has got a wee bit of the kind of oiliness that you would expect from a more macro brewed Pilsner, so I can see why they're calling it a premium lager in this case. But the question, you know, is it a nice beer? Absolutely. I think, you know, it's solidly done, and I think that Remmarlöv, I've had a few lager beers from these guys now, and I think they've been getting progressively better at them as time goes on. We've had a Helles, we had a smoked beer as well, and I think we've had another. We had a lager beer as well that had some fruit and things in it, which was quite interesting. Was it a watermelon lager, or was it a guava lager or something like this? But it was quite interesting. But if you want something that's more kind of authentic, this is potentially the most authentic one that I've had from them so far. But I think this is the first one I've had that's been termed like a premium lager actually, and I think it's might be the first one that's been a straight up Pils, come to think of it too, apart from actually the Skåne Pilsner, which is very, very nice. If you do see that, by the way, the Skåne Pilsner, that is a very very solid beer made with Skånsk malt, hops and yeast. It's just a shame the Skånsk hops aren't produced on a scale big enough to support that as a year-round beer, because that I think has been the best lager beer that I've had from these guys so far. And I would say to them, you know, if I was advising them, they don't have to listen of course, but my advice to them would be to make the Skånsk Pilsner a year-round beer if possible. But yeah, this is another very nice Pilsner beer from them. It really comes across as more of a it comes across as, you know, a quite solid German Pilsner beer, this one, but it's got a wee touch of the oiliness you'd expect from like a slightly more mass-produced beer. So, and I think that's why they call it a premium lager. But let's try and break this beer down for you a little bit and describe the flavour a little bit more in depth. So yeah, on the malty side of things with this beer then, straight away across that middle third of your palate you get a nice smooth white bready character in there. It's got a little bit of kind of smooth, it has the smoothness to it, but at the same time it has a little bit of that kind of more crisp character in a sense, so you do get a little bit of that. There's one or two little crackery elements to this beer, like a sort of Jacob's cream cracker. I do get a few little vibes of that in the base of this beer, but then sitting on top of that nice kind of crisp bready layer, you do just get this very slight oiliness that sits on top of that. And for me, it's that kind of oily character in the mouthfeel that makes this a premium lager rather than a straight up German Pils in a sense. But as I say, I really like these beers. For me, the German lager beers have been, and the Czech lager beers as well, these have been underrated and underappreciated for too long, to be honest with you. But a lot of breweries now seem to be trying their hand at them, and Remmarlöv have done some very nice ones actually. So I've got a feeling I might have told you a lie earlier in the video when I said this. I think I might have said this was the first Pilsner, but Skånsk Pilsner, as I say, was a very, very solid one from these guys. And they've done Helles, they've done a smoky lager beer as well. But yeah, this one, along with the Skånsk Pilsner, I would say, if I'm remembering all of them correctly, I would say that these two have been the ones that I'm most impressed with. And as I say, I look for authenticity in these beers, and this one has it. So yeah, like I say, a bit of a crackery backbone, smooth kind of white bready note in there, and you get a little bit, if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you get a wee touch of a bread crusty element coming out of it as well, which I really like. On the back half of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a, on the back half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the kind of crisp Pilsner malty qualities coming out of that one. So it's almost like if you go to the dead centre of your palate, then just follow the middle line of your tongue back a little bit, and that's when you get that crisp German dry Pilsner malt quality out of this beer, which is great. In the very centre of your palate, you've got a tiny little circle there, which, well, I say tiny, it's a little small circle anyway. But yeah, you get a nice little bit of that kind of oily circle sitting there in the middle of your palate, and then you get a wee bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. It's a bit more concentrated there. That's the alcohol flavour, of course. But then as you move further out from this one, as you move out towards the edge of the palate from that, then you get that's when you get the more kind of grainy part of the biscuit, the more McVitie's digestive sort of thing. But I think that covers the middle third of the palate quite well in this one. It is a very, very nice it is a very nice beer in that sense. So yeah, the malty side of the beer in this one, the middle third of your palate, is very nice in this, and I do think it sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste too. But like I say, it develops a wee bit of an oily wetness sitting on top of it as you move into the later half of your malt base, into the latter part of the flavour with this beer. But yeah, that covers the middle third of your palate. On the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little touch of a kind of bready build up to the beer, a wee bit of a bread crust sitting in there too. And then on the back third of the palate, you can feel a little bit more of the kind of grainy side of things coming out. On top of that back third, you do get a little bit of the yeasty quality, you do get a little bit of that kind of yeasty quality just kind of building up on top of it, which I really, really like. But yeah, that nice kind of yeasty quality that you get in there. You can feel the flavours a bit taller on the back third of your palate, but it condenses down quite sharply as you come forward, and then as you move into the middle third of your palate, it goes down quite a lot, and the middle third of your palate feels really kind of nice and swash and crisp together. So I really do like how that side of the beer goes about its business. So thumbs up to the malty side of the beer, and for me that's the most important part of the Pilsner beer, is getting that malty side of things right, actually. So yeah, they've done it with this one. Solid beer, very authentic. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, then back corners of the palate, as I say, you get a nice little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness to this one. As you move further forward, there's a little touch of a herbal quality there. But then as you move towards the front corners of the palate, you've got a nice floral aromaticity coming out of the beer. So it's got a nice little bit of a bright floral character too, which I can really appreciate. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of lighter grassy component to it. And I think, the green component for me is quite bright, and it almost has a wee touch of a kind of spicy note to it as well. So it makes me wonder, is there maybe a little bit of Czech Žatec in this? Because it feels a little touch spicy. So it could be, the aroma really made me think it was German hop in this, but it might be a combination of German and Czech Sats, but it could just be a slightly stronger German hop, such as Perl or something like that, actually. So yeah, interesting things to think. Or Hercules would be the other one. Might be something slightly stronger like that. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's got a nice wee bit of zestiness from the grassiness, a wee bit of spiciness. As I say, a nice kind of smooth, kind of earthiness at the back, in the back corners of the palate. So yeah, the hoppy side of the beer works very well with the malt base. On the front third of your palate then, where you get the nice fruity part of the beer, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again there's a little bit of a bready build up there, a wee bit of a bread crusty grainy dryness too, but the base of that front third of your palate is a sort of mix of a kind of crackery and soft, kind of crisp white bready note there. Then on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters roll out of the beer, and it is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest. But yeah, the how would you say, if you go on that oily part of the palate where you get the fruity elements, it's a little bit peary on the back half of the palate. For me, it really leans a little bit more towards a kind of peary sort of thing. There's maybe one or two little very, very slightly sort of apricot-y hints or something sitting underneath. But then as you move further forward, it gets a little bit more kind of lighter and and sort of appley, and maybe even a little touch limey or something like that. Maybe a wee tiny hint of lime in this one, just behind those nice grassy esters on the very front tip of the tongue. But yeah, I think it goes together really well, this one, in terms of authenticity and things. And for me, that's what I want from a Pilsner. The only complaint I have about this beer, it shouldn't be in a 330. They've had their other lager beers in 440s. They should have done it with this one. Selling a Pilsner beer in a 330 for me, nah. Not good, not good. But yeah, in terms of that's a minor thing. That's me being, that's me being a crispy boy, as Peter the Clueless Drinker would put it. I want lagers in 440s or half litres. So I don't like that they've sold it in the 330. I would sell it in the 440. That would be my only advice to them on this beer going forward. But in terms of authenticity, I think it is very nice. And in terms of the premium lager style, it does just give you a little bit of that oiliness, which you would and sweetness going into the aftertaste that you would expect. That's for me. That's what distinguishes a premium lager from a straight up Pilsner, if you like. Although in fairness, I have had some kind of more oily Pilsners. You can definitely get a little bit more of an oily Pilsner as well. But yeah, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So pardon me, this one is definitely a light-bodied beer. The carbonation is nice and crisp on this one, which is kind of what you want. That's what makes it lean towards being a more German Pilsner for me. The malt base gives a really nice, the malt base gives a very, very nice sort of, how would you say, just a little bit of crispness underneath. You've got a wee bit of smoothness in there, and you've got a little touch of sweetness, all things that you want from a Pilsner. Of course, it gets a little bit more oily the further that you go into it, which I think is great. And yeah, it just works very, very nicely actually. So I really like how all of that stuff in this beer goes together. So yeah, the malty side of the beer works very well. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this is maybe about a 25-30 IBU beer. What would we say there? I think about 25 IBUs, maybe 20. So yeah, 20-25 IBUs. And then the fruity side of things, it's got a little bit of a kind of oily sort of quality in there as well, which I do quite like too. But yeah, I like this one. I've really enjoyed this beer. As I say, my only complaint is that it's a 330. I would have wanted a 440 with something like this, because it just goes down very, very easily. But minor complaint, hopefully they change that some point in the future. But in terms of a core range beer, that one would also be very good. But I think the best one would be if they could get the hop production to the right level, or if Chrono Gordons could do that, it would be really cool to see the Skånsk Pilsner as a year-round beer. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this review then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri, and if you like a nice authentic German style Pilsner, then I think this one will suit you down to the ground, and it gives you the wee bit of oiliness you'd expect from a premium lager as well. But yeah, always cool to review my local breweries. I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you on the next one. The Lux Pilsner, 5% ABV from Remmarlöv Gårdsbryggeri in Eslöv here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Cheers.